Today we're going to be talking about this 2019 Toyota Tacoma TRD Off-Road. And this is one incredible vehicle that I'm actually really excited to talk about. It has some neat modifications, and of course it is a Toyota Tacoma, which has a massive cult following in both the overlanding and the off-road space, which we're going to be talking about a little bit later in this video. Now I want to say two different things before I get too far into this video. Number one, I apologize for the audio. There is a river down there and we're in the middle of runoff season, so it is messing with the audio a little bit, so I apologize for that. The second thing is I want to thank the dirt tourist who lent me this pickup truck today to tell you guys all about it. He specializes in modified vehicles like these Toyotas and the Tacomas, and he also had like the Prado that I recently reviewed and a bunch of other vehicles as well, and they're really awesome vehicles. So make sure to check out his Instagram. It is linked down in the description and the top comment. And with that, let's keep on rolling. So we of course need to start off this video by talking about the powertrain, so we need to go under the hood right here. So my initial plan for this part of the video was actually to do this handheld and showing you guys the engine. However, I realized I cannot actually get the hood open with one hand, which I hold my camera with the other hand. It is so incredibly heavy. I didn't realize how heavy these things are. I really have no idea why. This would probably be the first thing I replace with a carbon fiber version just because of how heavy it is. However, that said, you don't actually need to get under this hood very often because of this engine. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Now, up until this point, Toyota was most well known for their 4.0 liter and their 4.7 liter engine. However, with this 2019 model we have here, it has the 3.5 liter V6, which from what I have seen is probably just as reliable as those older engines, but you got an upgrade in both horsepower and torque, meaning you got 278 horsepower and 265 pound-foot of torque, which is really important when you're doing things like overlanding and off-roading, because those two things make a big difference in those aspects, as well as, you know, passing on the road. Now, this engine is mated with a 6-speed automatic transmission. This is a rear-wheel drive platform, but it does have a 4-wheel drive system in it, meaning you get power to all 4 wheels instead of just to the rear, which would actually make this a pre-runner. And it really gets good gas mileage as well. This gets 19 miles to the gallon in the city, 24 miles to the gallon on the highway, and the mix of those two is around 20 miles per gallon. And this powertrain also makes a big difference in towing, as it gets up to 6,700 pounds of towing capacity. All right, so talking about the exterior now of the pickup truck, and I actually really like this color. I was surprised today when I picked this thing up from the dirt tourist just how nice this white looks. So the white color on this is actually called Super White, which is pretty original, but it does look extremely nice, and I'm very impressed with how it cleans up. I think this white is probably one of the things that you see the most on these Tacomas, and it's just kind of an iconic color. Now, as for the front of this vehicle, you have some really aggressive headlights, which I think is kind of funny because you see this little grill right here. It's a fake grill. So this is a post facelift front end, and I always find it funny how they find ways to make it so it's a little bit more aggressive by filling this in and giving a different headlight, whereas the previous generation obviously had a headlight portion right here and they just filled it in to kind of make a little bit more of a squinted look to it. But they did a great job. I really do like the front end of this. It definitely has a more aggressive look than the older versions, and it just works really well for this off-road vehicle. Of course, we're going to talk a little bit later about that bumper, so we won't get into that right now. As for the side profile, I do really like it with these Toyota Tacomas. It's a little bit understated and not overstyled, which we're seeing a little bit more in the more recent generation of Tacoma that's just now hitting the roads. But you do still have a little bit more of a hard ridge rather than a rounded like you would see on the older Tacomas, and it looks really nice. So these plastic fender flares do actually come off of the body quite a bit, and I do like the way that they look. Of course, they are plastic because you want to make something that's easily and cheaply replaceable when you're doing an off-road rig. So those look really nice and give it a little bit more of a muscular design. And moving around to the rear of the vehicle, there isn't a ton to talk about. Of course, they do have the Tacoma stamped in the bottom of the tailgate like a lot of pickups nowadays have, and the taillights look pretty nice. I do wish that they had a little bit more of kind of a DRL look to them, but they look nice and they're just kind of a little bit understated. The rear bumper there, as you can see, has sensors in it for the backup camera and for allowing it to basically notify you when you're about to back into something. And then right up here is going to be your hatch to get into the rear, but right here is your backup camera integrated into this, which is smart because I am sure back when they added the backup camera, because this generation of Toyota Tacoma has been around so long, they just integrated it into the rear thing instead of having to completely redesign the rear end of this vehicle. All right, so let's move into the back. This does have a damped rear tailgate, so basically it moves down slowly. So now this is your rear truck bed. So this is going to be 60.5 inches long, and then at its widest point right here, it is 56.7 inches wide. Of course, you do have those wheel wells, which will affect it in the front, but that is basically your basic dimensions right here. As for utilities in the back, you do have a standard household style plug right there. You do have a little storage space behind there, and that honestly is about it. There isn't much going on in the bed of this truck, and that's perfectly fine because the more stuff that's in the back means less reliability. All right, so before we jump into the interior of the pickup truck, I do want to talk about the modifications because they're, well, on the outside of the vehicle. And so that actually starts with right here. So this has a Dobinson's MRR 3-way adjustable reservoir shock and leaf kit. Then these right here are SES F5 17-inch wheels that are wrapped in Maxxis Razor MT tires. And then the last thing is right here. This is a CBI classic front bumper. So I have been seeing these front bumpers in so many different places, so many different builds I've been reviewing lately, and I think they look really nice and honestly extremely high quality. From my experience, you really can't go wrong with them, and they're pretty decent price as well. So now we're gonna jump into the interior, but stay tuned because I'm gonna be talking more about why these are so popular in the overlanding and the off-roading space after that. All right, so let's go ahead and jump inside. First by unlocking it by using this extremely simple key fob, which is really simple considering it's a 2019 vehicle. And let's go ahead and get inside. So I really like Toyota's steering wheel here. Of course, I have the wheels turned, so let's get that turned back around and get inside. So let's get in, let's start it up. And let's turn that steering wheel to center so you guys get a good look at it, and let's go ahead and turn it off again. So anyway, so this steering wheel is really nice. I do like it. I think it has a kind of a muscular style to it that a lot of other pickup trucks don't have. I think Toyota's done an amazing job on this, which is a stark contrast to a lot of their older steering wheels that I'm not a huge fan of. I don't know why I'm so picky about steering wheels. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit more about what we are finding on the steering wheel, because a lot of the important features that come with this pickup truck come from the features on the steering wheel. So the first thing is going to be lane departure. So it does have lane departure warnings just by pressing that button right there. Then right here is going to be your adaptive cruise control. Yes, even in this aging platform of a Toyota Tacoma, they did include lane departure, which you could see up in the front. And then of course over here is a bunch of your radio controls, which is pretty standard in most vehicles. You have your phone call settings, and then right here is how you get around in your infotainment center in your center screen up here. Moving to that center screen, you have a kind of a small digital dash. They hadn't quite moved to a full digital dash like we saw in the Tundra that I recently reviewed, but they kind of kept to a more simplified and easy to understand analog gauges throughout the front there. So that is kind of nice. Now moving over to the center stack over here, you do have a center infotainment screen. It's not huge. Toyota didn't really lean into those larger screens until the more recent generation of Tacoma as well as more recent generation of Tundra. So you have a more simplified screen. Of course, you do have things like a physical power button and volume button for the stereo, and there's your tune and scroll button right here, and that's about it. There is an exposed CD player up there, which I thought was kind of interesting because you don't really see that very often anymore. Moving down below, you have a lot of other features here. Of course, this is your engine start stop button. This is how you change into 4 high, 4 low, and 2-wheel drive. Right here is going to be all of your HVAC controls. I really do like how Toyota has these kind of a little bit more utilitarian style knobs where they kind of have the paint that goes out. I don't know, I like the way these look. And then right here is going to be your heated mirror button, along with a bunch of other things down here, including a QI charger, which is right here. So you put your phone down here, you press that button, and you can charge your phone wirelessly, which is nice. It does have an automatic rear window button, so that rear window back there can open automatically. Now, moving a little bit farther back, you do have 2 cup holders. They are a decent size, and they are, you know, adjustable, so you can fit bigger and smaller stuff stuff in there without it falling over. And then right here is going to be your physical shifter. I am so happy that Toyota is sticking with physical shifters. Instead of just being another shift knob on the dash, I really do like that they're keeping it. It is a bit of a weird shifting pattern. So to get into things like reverse, neutral, drive, you have to push over and then back to get to it instead of just backwards, which I am used to in a lot of the other vehicles. But that's kind of interesting. Kind of makes it feel like I'm more of a manual vehicle, but you know, obviously it's not. And then you can manually shift gears by popping it into drive all the way down here, and then you push it over and you can go up and down in gears right there. Now for people like me that like cup holders, there is an additional cup holder in the center console. Yes, 1, 2, and 3 right there. And then right here is just a little bit of a storage space. And then inside of here is going to be your center console and just kind of general storage. There isn't anything too special in there other than I think there is a charge port down in there as well. Now the dash up here is going to be hard plastic. Unfortunately, they didn't do soft touch materials there. This is actually hard plastic, which surprised me. A lot of manufacturers use soft touch on all of your door panels. This is somewhat soft touch, but even then is not super soft touch. And then that theme is carried over into the passenger seat as well. As for buttons on the door, they are just kind of your standard buttons of what you would expect from every other car. And then down below there, you can see there are actually 2 more cup holders. So within sight of the driver, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cup holders in this thing, which is kind of crazy that there's 5 cup holders just for the driver alone. As for these seats, so these are the cloth seats for if you do want an overlanding or an off-road rig. These are actually the ones to get because they do hold you in place better. However, you can get the off-road premium package, which upgrades these to leather seats. So if you do still want that off-road build but want leather seats, you can do that. I will add that these seats are not heated or ventilated. I think you need to do an additional package to get that, which this one doesn't have. So if you want to get ventilated or heated seats, this is probably not the one to get. And then building on that theme, let's get out of this vehicle. Right here, you can see these are manual seats, no automatic seats for you. And now let's move into the back seat. So this is pretty well known as being a back seat that does not have a ton of room and is not what the strong suit is for this vehicle. And I'd have to agree, you definitely are cramped. As you can see, my knees are touching the front seat there. My head is only, probably about an inch from the ceiling. I am 6 foot, 6'1". I don't totally know which one at the moment, but this is a very cramped back seat. In fact, a lot of overlanders and off-roaders will sometimes remove this back seat and replace it with storage bins and that kind of stuff just because it isn't something that is super usable. And to be completely honest, there aren't a ton of features other than 2 more cup holders right here. There isn't charging down here, unfortunately. For 2019, that is kind of crazy, but it is nice having 2 cup holders. However, I do kind of find it funny right here. It says capped bottles only, which I don't know if you're gonna get in trouble if you put an uncapped bottle there, but they do warn you about that. But jumping out again, I want to show you a cool feature of the Tacoma. And what you can do is you pull this little strap right here, and you have storage space behind these seats, which is kind of cool because it's kind of a hidden storage space so that if you have little things, you can put it back there. And then in the same theme, you can actually pull that tab right there. And then there is a little storage bin right here. It is the same for both of these back seats. So if you pull that up or push this forward, they each have their own storage. And that is also where you keep the jack underneath of there. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit more about why you see these as an overlanding and an off-roading build. So you don't see it with things like Chevy Colorados all that often, Ford Rangers, and a lot of the other mid-sized pickups that are competitors to this. But there's 4 different reasons why people like to use this instead of those pickup trucks for those kind of builds. And the first one comes down to reliability. These things are known for going over 300,000 miles, 500,000 miles. The Tundras, even I've heard, can go over 1,000,000 miles. And it's just an impressive pickup truck. And it's really important when you're going off-roading or overlanding that you don't break down somewhere that you can't fix it. So reliability is key in the fact that they use these for these overlanding builds. Next up comes down to its size. So these pickup trucks are not massive, but they're also not tiny. So they do a great job of fitting a ton of different gear into that pickup truck bed, and the front seats, maybe not the rear seats, but it is just an added benefit of this pickup truck. Because it is really important to be able to, when you're going off-road, have a smaller pickup truck that can go down those kind of winding roads, smaller trails, and making sure that they're not hitting stuff on the side. Now, of course, especially with the overlanding side of things, another big benefit is the gas mileage. Getting up to 24 miles to the gallon when on the highway is pretty impressive, so it is nice to have that, especially in an overlanding build. Then finally, it just comes down to the aftermarket support of these. Now, all the other things kind of mixed together are the reason why there's so much aftermarket support is because people actually use the aftermarket components, but things like this really nice CBI off-road bumper is really indicative of what this pickup truck has for aftermarket. These have been built out to be insane off-road and overlanding builds, and so the aftermarket support is really important and is a big reason why people use these for an overlanding build. A good example is I've been trying to build up my Tahoe recently, and it doesn't have good aftermarket support and has caused a ton of issues with me finding good parts for it. So having good aftermarket support really does matter and is a big part of why these are such good overlanding builds. All right, so now we have a chance to drive this 2019 Toyota Tacoma. And I have to say, I really like the way that these drive. They are extremely planted. They feel super wide. I had a chance to drive a 4Runner of the same generation a while back, and for quite a long time, and I really, really liked the way that it drove. They just feel so like planted. Now, of course, you know, the acceleration on these things isn't the best. It's not like they're sports car level or anything like that, but they do drive very nice. And I just can't say enough how planted they feel and like sturdy. And while the back seat is rather small, the front actually doesn't really feel all that small. I remember the 4Runner I drove before felt a lot smaller than this one, and I'm not totally sure why that is. I'm sure they have a very similar size cabin, but this one feels really, really spacious. I'm not feeling really cramped or anything in the front seat like I would be in the back seat, but it feels really nice. The driving position is really nice. I try not to adjust the seats too much based off what the owner does, just to kind of not mess them up or anything like that, but it is really comfortable. The seats are comfortable. They definitely hold you because they are cloth. Again, that is a great thing for off-roading, but if you are wanting to have this as a daily driver and not do a ton of off-roading, those leather seats are really nice because they are much easier to clean and stuff like that. But the cloth seats are really not an issue at all for me. As for power delivery of this pickup truck, obviously it's not the most powerful pickup truck in the world, but it definitely is no slouch and doesn't really have any issues getting up to speed. Everything shifts really well. It feels very solid, and I have no complaints on that end of things. And then visibility around is pretty decent. I don't really feel like I have too many dead spots. Even this pillar over here, which is generally the main culprit for a lot of vehicles, is not giving me any dead spots. I mean, obviously there's a little one, but it's not too much of an issue. Now, I should mention this does have some good off-road tires on it, but the downside to that is there is a pretty good amount of road noise coming from those tires, and it's really hard to say if it's the off-road tires or if it's the vehicle itself, but it does have some road noise here and there, but it's nothing really too big of a deal, especially when you're driving a pickup truck. It's kind of to be expected. And so that is a complete walkthrough of this 2019 Toyota Tacoma TRD Off-Road. This is an awesome rig, and I really, really do like this generation of Tacoma. I would love to get my hands on the new generation, which hopefully I will at some point here soon, but as of right now, this is a great mid-size pickup truck, which does a great job of being a platform for awesome off-road and overlanding builds. So right here is a video that you guys should definitely check out about a 2022 Toyota Tundra overlanding build that I recently reviewed. So also make sure to subscribe, just in case you do like videos like this, and like this video, it helps me out in the algorithm, and I look forward to see you guys soon.